For thousands of years, humans have lived in the shadow of volcanoes. We've witnessed their awesome power firsthand, and we've seen how they can destroy everything in their path. And yet, we've also been drawn to them, settling near these fiery mountains in spite of the danger they pose. Hi, it's me, and this is Living on the Edge, where we explore the thin line between humanity's greatest triumphs and our greatest disasters. On February 27, 1904, Mount Vesuvius erupted. It had been quiet for about 600 years, and no one was really expecting it to blow. But in the blink of an eye, it unleashed 18 billion cubic feet of ash and pumice, burying the nearby city of Naples under 5 feet of material and covering an area the size of Connecticut with volcanic debris. But the world kept spinning. The sun came up the next morning and set that night, just as it does every day. Life on Earth continued without skipping a beat. But for the 3,000 people who died during the eruption, life did come to a sudden halt. For the countless others who survived but lost everything, life would never be the same. And all they had to show for it was a fine layer of ash covering the remnants of their former lives. And while this disaster was relatively recent in human history, it's far from being the first. Throughout the ancient Mediterranean, there were many cultures who lived in the shadow of Vesuvius, including the Greeks and the Etruscans. But the city that got hit the hardest was Roman Pompeii. It was a bustling metropolis with a population around the size of modern Boston's, which makes Vesuvius one of the most dangerous volcanoes in the world. In fact, it's one of 6 supervolcanoes identified by the United States Geological Survey as capable of global devastation. So it might surprise you to learn that 3 million people currently call the Naples area home. That means roughly the same percentage of people live within Vesuvius's blast radius now as did in 79 AD, right before the eruption. Back then, the residents of Pompeii probably felt pretty safe. The last major eruption had occurred in the 1st century BC, and it was so long ago that it was just a distant memory. Instead, their biggest concern was probably the earthquake that struck in the summer of 79, which caused significant damage to buildings throughout the region. But by the time spring rolled around, most of the damage was repaired, and people went about their business as usual. That's when the tremors began. They started off minor, like a constant low rumble, but quickly intensified into something violent. People could feel their homes shaking as the ground split open and fire erupted from the newly formed cracks. With each passing hour, more fissures opened up, releasing tremendous amounts of gas and superheated steam. As these new vents grew larger, the fire intensified until it was clear that something big was happening. People ran away from the coast, hoping to escape the advancing wall of flame, only to find themselves trapped between the sea and a mountain of hot ash. There was nowhere left to go. Trapped in a small cluster of houses near the Porta Stabia gate, 2,000 refugees huddled together, praying for a miracle. But there was no salvation coming. They were about to be buried alive. Ash fell from the sky for days. When it finally stopped, it revealed a landscape forever changed by the cataclysm that had struck it down. Whole cities had vanished beneath the gray blanket, never to be seen again. Villagers who had fled to the hills found their way home, only to be met by scenes of utter devastation. Houses were destroyed and corpses littered the streets. Some were so covered in ash that their faces were hidden, while others still clutched the belongings they had grabbed in their rush to escape. In the aftermath, entire families were wiped out. To this day, archaeologists are still finding bones in the ruins of Pompeii and Herculaneum. Among them are those of a pregnant woman, a pair of lovers embracing in their final moments, and even a dog that was killed while trying to protect its owner. The catastrophe killed so many people that there weren't enough bodies to bury, so mass graves were dug to collect the dead. Today, scientists use Pompeii and Herculaneum as case studies to understand how the human body reacts to volcanic disasters. By examining the skeletal remains, researchers hope to gain insights that will help them predict how future eruptions will affect people's health. For example, they're studying the teeth of victims to determine what they ate in the days leading up to the disaster. This information will be used to develop early warning systems for populations living near active volcanoes today. So why do people continue to live near such volatile mountains? Well, For thousands of years, volcanoes have been considered sacred places, powerful symbols of the natural world that hold both danger and beauty. Many cultures have myths and legends about volcanoes, and some people believe that they're home to gods or spirits. For example, the Aztecs believed that their god Huitzilopochtli lived at the top of Popocatépetl, one of Mexico's most active volcanoes. The Japanese revere Mount Fuji as a sacred place, and for centuries, pilgrims have climbed its slopes to see the sunrise. But perhaps the most famous volcano in the world is Mount Vesuvius. The Romans revered it as a god, and to this day, people are drawn to its slopes. One reason for this is the fertile soil that covers its lower slopes. This volcanic ash is rich in nutrients like potassium and phosphorus, which make it ideal for growing crops. In fact, some of the best tomatoes and wines in the world come from the region around Vesuvius. Another reason people live near volcanoes is because they're often located in areas with abundant natural resources. The Mediterranean region, for example, is home to some of the oldest and most important archaeological sites in the world. Mount Vesuvius itself sits near the city of Naples, which has been home to some of Italy's greatest artists and thinkers. The ancient Greeks settled on the slopes of Vesuvius over 2,000 years ago because of its strategic location. They knew that the mountain was a potential source of danger, but they also knew that it was home to valuable resources. In fact, the Greeks built a city near the mouth of the volcano because they believed that the heat from the mountain would keep their ships from rotting. Today, the city of Naples is home to over 4 million people, making it one of the largest cities in Europe. Other major cities that sit in the shadow of volcanoes include Guatemala City, which sits on the edge of an active volcanic crater, and Mexico City, which sits near the highly active Trans-Mexican volcanic belt. But perhaps the most surprising example is Tokyo, which sits at the edge of the infamous Pacific Ring of Fire, one of the most seismically active places on Earth. According to some estimates, there is a 70% chance that a massive earthquake will strike Tokyo in the next 30 years. Yet it remains one of the world's largest and most densely populated cities. When you look at a map of the world's volcanoes, it's hard not to notice that they're concentrated in a few key areas. For example, the Pacific Northwest is home to more than 100 active volcanoes, including Mount Steady Helens and Mount Rainier. The area is known as the Cascade Volcanic Arc, and it owes its existence to the subduction zone that lies beneath the ocean off the coast of Oregon and Washington. As the Juan de Fuca microplate collides with the North American plate, the denser oceanic crust is pulled beneath the continental crust. As it descends into the Earth's mantle, the pressure and temperature increase dramatically, causing the rock to melt and form magma. This magma is less dense than the surrounding rock, so it rises toward the surface. Eventually, it erupts as lava, ash, and gases, creating the majestic peaks that define the Cascade Range. The Cascades aren't the only mountains that owe their existence to subduction zones. In fact, most of the major mountain ranges in the world were created in the same way, including the Alps, the Himalayas, and the Andes. What's unique about the Cascades is that they're still growing. The region experiences regular earthquakes and volcanic activity, which means that the mountains are still being shaped by the forces that created them. Subduction zones are also responsible for some of the most powerful earthquakes in recorded history. For example, the 2011 Tohoku earthquake in Japan was triggered by the sudden slip of the Japan Trench, a deep subduction zone that lies beneath the ocean off the coast of Japan. The earthquake caused a massive tsunami that killed thousands of people and caused billions of dollars in damage. But it also gave scientists an unprecedented opportunity to study the inner workings of subduction zones. Using a network of underwater sensors, they were able to map the shape of the seafloor in 3D and learn more about how the Earth's plates are moving. In recent years, scientists have become increasingly concerned about the potential for a massive earthquake along the San Andreas fault line in California. The fault line is a transform boundary that runs for nearly 800 miles through the state. It's responsible for some of the most famous earthquakes in California's history, including the 1994 Northridge earthquake and the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake. but it hasn't ruptured in a large earthquake in nearly 30 years, leading some experts to believe that it's overdue. If a major earthquake does strike, it could cause catastrophic damage to California's infrastructure and economy. But it would also provide scientists with the unique opportunity to study one of the most active fault lines in the world. In fact, scientists are already using data from small earthquakes that occur along the fault line to better understand the risk posed by a larger event. By studying these smaller earthquakes, they're able to map the fault line in greater detail and learn more about how the two plates are moving past each other. The information they gather is then used to develop building codes and emergency plans in the event of a major earthquake. While the threat of earthquakes and volcanic eruptions is always present, the benefits of living in these areas are simply too great for humans to resist. The fertile soil, abundant resources, and stunning natural beauty have drawn people to these places for thousands of years. And despite the risks, most people are willing to accept them in exchange for the chance to live in such awe-inspiring places. It's me. This has been Living on the Edge, and we'll see you next time.